Okay, so for today we will be discussing the Madonna and Child with Two Angels by the artist Fra Filippo Lippi, which was commissioned by Cosmo de' Medici. This is work number 71 in our notes, and here's the general information. Feel free to pause the video and continue when you're ready. Alright, so we'll start off by analyzing this painting in its entirety. So at first glance, we notice that this work is much more naturalistic and much more sensual compared to many other Madonna and Child paintings, such as this one, especially the works of the Byzantine Empire and the Middle Ages, where Mary and Christ appear to be very flat and stiff, with elongated features, like the fingers and the face, as they sit in front of an also very flat background. The figures in this painting, were very human at the time because the artist wanted to show the humanity of biblical figures rather than simply just making them representational. So, when we take a closer look at Mary, we can see that she has her hands clasped in prayer. Her facial features and clothing are very delicate, and if you look closely up here, you can see that her halo is very faint. And as the years go by in the Renaissance, the halos will become less and less apparent. So the drapery is akin to that of classical Hellenistic art because of how detailed the folds are and how they appear to have a lot of volume and depth. She has pearls woven into her hair with an almost transparent veil that drapes down her head, creating very light, dainty, delicate folds. So transparent fabric became a new decorative element during the early Renaissance period, so you'll see this a lot later on. It's also undeniable that Mary looks very youthful and also very classically beautiful right here. Fra Filippo Lippi was known for his portraits of beautiful women, but why is he so good at painting them, you may ask? So although he was a monk, he was also a very lustful man, and he got around. But whenever he met a woman who did not want to get around with him, he dealt with the situation by painting her portrait. So that's where he got all the experience from. It is also said that Mary in this painting was based off of a nun named Lucretia, who was so beautiful that Fra Filippo Lippi begged her to leave the convent and become his mistress, which she did, and then later on became his wife. Anyway, back to Mary. So she is sitting on a very ornate chair with an embroidered cushion and detailed arm carving. It's sort of like she's enthroned, and it's somewhat subtle, unlike previous Madonna Child works of art, where it's obvious that Mary is enthroned. And Mary is dressed like a middle-class Florentine woman, and you might think, wait a second, that's not accurate because Mary was considered poor, so she wouldn't be wearing something this ornate. And yes, you would be correct. But the artist chose to dress her this way with reason. So, at the time, Florence was thriving, essentially. There were rising classes of merchants and middle classes. So, her clothing makes her relatable, and this relatability allows the viewer to connect a lot more easily with the piece, and in turn potentially increasing piousness by bringing the everyday viewer closer to this holy scene. Now let's take a closer look at Mary's expression. She appears to be very solemn and lost in thought, and that's because she knows what's going to happen to Jesus in the future. So, close to Mary, we have the baby Jesus Christ, with also a very light and solemn look on his face. He looks into his mother's eyes and reaches out with one arm to console her because he knows that she knows about his fate. Though Christ, along with all the other angels, look very naturalistic as well. In this case, Christ looks like an actual baby, as opposed to the usual old man look that the older works portray him as. The angels who are lifting up Christ are wearing white tunics and appear to be very playful looking. The angel in the front, right here, has a playfully devious look, like he is about to laugh at you. He's looking at the viewer as if he's inviting them into the scene. The angel in the back amplified right here, is just barely peeking through. And this type of image, I guess, would never have been seen during the medieval times, but because it would detract greatly from the seriousness of the story that the Madonna in Child is supposed to convey. So this edition demonstrates and continues on the artist's playfulness. So there's a contrast between the amusement of the angels and the contemplative demeanor of Mary and Christ. And this is because the angels know that even though Christ will endure great hardships, in the end, they know that everything's going to be just fine. So, unlike many Madonna and Child works, there's actually a background back here, rather than just simply gold leaf or a congregation of priests. So here, the artist has depicted the Arno River Valley, and this is in Florence as well. So there are many high rocks, valleys, and so much more, a little town in the back too. And this is a great use of perspective, which gives the painting even more of a three-dimensional appearance. So this purplish border right here is supposed to be the frame of the painting of Florence. So it's a painting inside of a painting. So if you look closely, right here, Mary's shadow is lightly casted upon the painting, making it seem like she's standing in front of it. But it also appears like Mary is standing in front of a window. So it's like she's sitting half in and half out of that window. The experiences of Lippi and other Renaissance artists have changed the way art was seen. While Lippi was commissioned to paint Medici's work, he was locked up inside of a room because he was known to wander out about town and get wild. So eventually, Lippi got fed up of being locked up, and he took some bed sheets, tied them together, and escaped the confinement of the room. It was then that the commissioner, Medici, who locked him in the room, realized that artists need to be treated with respect. Now, in this Renaissance era, there were no longer just skilled laborers. Artists were no longer just skilled laborers, but seen as professionals who were intellectuals, who not only work with skill, but with inspiration. So being stifled in a locked room takes away from that inspiration, which therefore takes away the individualism of the artist. And the Renaissance encapsulated much of that individualism. So something I would compare this work to is the Virgin and Child with Two Angels by the artist Sandro Botticelli. So there are evidently many similarities. Mary is sitting down, appearing subtly enthroned. Mary is looking solemnly down and being consoled by baby Jesus, who looks up towards her and reaches out his arms to comfort her. There's also those naturalistic, soft styles. Baby Jesus looks like a baby, and Mary is painted to be classically beautiful. The halos are not as light as they are in Lippi's piece, but are nonetheless lighter than they were many years back. There's a lot of detailed drapery, there's a transparent veil, there's the two angels, there's a beautiful background scenery of Italy with that nice perspective. And Botticelli worked under Lippi, so that's most likely why there are so many commonalities. And that concludes today's presentation. Arrivederci!